These two, man. They've really been through the mills, haven't they? Hey guys, MasakoX here. Today we're going to be talking about two characters who had a real struggle in order to try and define themselves ever since the really confrontational and conflicting memories of the Buu saga that we talked about last time. While we all agree that Goku is indeed the main character of Dragon Ball Z as well as the entirety of Dragon Ball, despite the best efforts of some other characters trying to get the spotlight, most of the other characters can actually claim to have had the most development throughout the entire series, more so than Goku. When you compare it to other shows, Goku might be the main character who has the least development out of any main character that's gone before or since. This isn't the first time that we've talked about this notion, not by a long shot, but it still deserves to be mentioned that Goku's not really changed since the moments and days that he was when we saw him as a kid. You see, Dragon Ball Z is primarily the story of the development of two other characters that really strive for different things throughout their entire runs. Those arcs within the main series are both a blessing, but also a curse for them. Because they will be stuck within the same borders, that means that they're limited in terms of scope where they can go in future outings for Dragon Ball. Well, I'm talking about Gohan and Vegeta. You've been talking about how Gohan and Vegeta developed a lot during Super. Why are you going back over this again? Don't worry, I will be getting to that in good time, so hear me out. The path of Gohan starts off relatively easily. He is a very shy young kid who is somewhat bookish based around his mother, and is really just acting like any kind of child at his age of 4. After that, he then has to deal with a really big struggle about what he's going to be doing. Is he going to become a scholar, or is he going to try and become a warrior like his dad? You know, those two things are very, very different from one another. Like it or not though, fighting is going to be part of his life for his entire life, so it's really inescapable. We go from the times when he was just a little child, unaware and unfamiliar of his surroundings and what's going on around him, through him unwilling to fight and only fighting out of just sheer survival strategy and really having him go irrational, you know, his rage boosts. He's not doing this for enjoyment like his father. At all. And then finally him coming through with acceptance of him becoming Earth's defender after Goku sacrificed himself during the Cell Games. And then ultimately him failing to achieve the role and then going back to what he was doing before, really just focusing on his studying and becoming a family man. Not that that's wrong, but in terms of potential of what could have happened, it wasn't handled really well at all. At the same time, Vegeta's story is all about redemption, and him trying to find a new home after his previous home was taken from him by the likes of Lord Frieza. And then he had to live a life of servitude, which was unbefitting for the Prince of all Saiyans. On paper, these stories sound really immersive and a really huge range for scope. And we love those two characters for it, where they go in their story. We are really involved with it. We love Gohan because we grew up with him when we were children or young adults. He was our Goten and Trunks back in the day. Only collectively less annoying. And we love Vegeta, who, despite being a total badass and the ultimate anti-hero who is being still copied to this day, meant that he wasn't infallible. He screwed up so many times. Things could have easily been avoided had Vegeta not started to meddle. But really, that's where we got some of the most perilous moments in Dragon Ball. When the stakes were raised, you could be very safe to say that Vegeta was somehow involved. Okay, so what are you trying to say, Masako? What is the difference of Gohan and Vegeta? It just seems like they're just other characters, only that they did more and they were included more. Gohan and Vegeta's stories in Super, it's really hard for me to say. They are the same as they were before. They are just being recycled. But this is something that we've touched upon before, and it's really intrinsic to how Dragon Ball's become popular, and it's actually applicable with some characters that have been in other successful shows, which have transcended from just being regular series to higher status. You see, after Dragon Ball Z ended in 1996, and even when GT was stumbling along trying to exist, the people and characters in Dragon Ball became media icons. They had ceased to be just regular characters, they had become entire character archetypes. And thusly, they formed a new visual cue. Other things that other characters and creators could then look to for inspiration, and therefore change how characters developed. Goku wasn't just Goku anymore. He became the main character person who was incredibly powerful and somewhat likable, and was a shonen stereotype, as well as being someone who was really skilled in martial arts. Vegeta was no longer Vegeta, he had become the zenith of all anti-heroes that would come after Dragon Ball. if you wanted to come up with an anti-hero, look to Vegeta for inspiration. And while GT was a thing at the time, it was nowhere near as popular or as iconic in terms of characterization like Dragon Ball Z was. The main cast were just different, despite having the same names. But regardless of what you say about Dragon Ball GT, there is one part of it that has become iconic in terms of media, and it's something that we all recognize almost instantaneously within the fandom. You know what I'm talking about? Super Saiyan 4. However, what really hindered GT is that the characterization, iconization of all of the people in Dragon Ball Z when you saw them in GT, it meant that that series was hindered ultimately. They haven't really changed in the 5 years since the end of Z. If GT had started off with these characters being entirely different, this might have been interesting. But no, we just recognize them from the end of the Buu saga and the Peaceful World saga. Gohan was studying and Vegeta was a family man. And that was it. Nothing had really changed, except for the fact that now Vegeta could cut his hair. I don't know what was up with that. We also mentioned in a previous episode and discussion that Toei is very, very risk averse when it comes to its main characters, choosing throughout Super to not really focus on Gohan and Vegeta that much in coming up with new stories, but to instead focus on Roshi and 17, because they are far lower in terms of risk if you change them and people don't like them, or they don't know what to do with them. You can easily change it with a minor major character. And to be honest, they kind of had to change those two because Roshi is vastly irrelevant and really inappropriate for this time and day and age. And then 17 really didn't have anything. 18 had something, but 17 didn't. You could tinker with those two, and really, the worst that would happen is that they could easily just push them back into the background or just say, oh, lol, sorry, and then just try and act like nothing happened. Luckily for Toei though, the changes that they made to Roshi and 17 were received very well, especially with Roshi, provided that it sticks. And even though we didn't get to see 17's family when he got his boat, we still got to see a lot of 17 and something different, thankfully. But yeah, Toei didn't show us the family, they kind of got cold feet at the last minute. So okay, we have Gohan and Vegeta. What can we do with them? Well, according to Toei, let's just do what we did before. They can't really do too much because these two are far too popular to try and change them entirely. They can't do anything drastic. So what can they do with Gohan in Super? What kind of character development can we have? Throughout a period of time, Gohan has become weaker, focusing on his studying and family, and that's what we got in the Buu saga. He become weaker, Vegeta commenting, and then he had to build it back up again. And really, that's what we got in Super. I mean, really, what were we expecting? The fact it even happened is a blessing in itself, but the fact, now that I've actually started to sit down and think about it, it's just a history repeating. Put simply, Gohan needs to find a balance between family and fighting, and I get that. It's a laudable goal to be able to have some kind of clarity in your life. Okay, credit where credit's due. But it is something that we've seen before, and as for Vegeta, he's becoming the protector for his family. Which is kind of what we saw with his atonement and the Majin Vegeta thing. Just saying. These goals do sound good on paper, and if they pulled it off right at the end, with them, figuring against Jiren in the Tournament of Power, it would have been somewhat satisfying. But neither of them got to the final fight. Vegeta did get close, mind. So really, we got a very unsatisfying conclusion to a story that we have seen at least 2 or 3 times before. To top this all off, we know what the results of this are going to be because we see them both at the end of Z. The only thing that Toei or Toriyama could do at this point to fix the situation and to raise the stakes properly, to add some peril, would be to either retcon the Peaceful World saga or classify it as non-canon entirely, so that means the end of Z is now just null and void. But I don't think they would do that, because the Peaceful World saga is in the manga, and if you're going back and reneging the manga, that's a big deal. That wouldn't go down well in Japan. It would have been the leadest of lead balloons. Toei pretended to make a change, which looked good visually, but it was the recycled thing we got before, as I've been saying. This is something. I may be recycling this point, rehashing it, but it has to be said. Toei kind of played us for a bunch of saps. Vegeta did evolve, and he got some very endearing moments, and some moments where we were thinking about Super, oh, thank God they talked about Vegeta. Those moments, they were really good. But, and what's worst of all, is that this would be bad enough if it was just these 2 characters suffering from this problem. But because of those 2 characters, it means that other characters can't progress either. In some cases, they go backwards. Many fans loved Videl for her tomboyish attitude and teasing Gohan to the point of really just making him like second guess himself every single time. That no-nonsense personality, brilliant. Honestly, she was one of the highlights of the Buu saga in my opinion. She was the perfect foil for Gohan's shy and timid nature, trying to push him out of his comfort zone and make him discover himself. Someone that may give him a bit of a hard time on occasion, but could really make him grow and evolve as a man. Those two were the perfect team, literally. But sadly, she's now been relegated to the role of the wife-type character. Her only role right now is to support Gohan, and not in a good way. It seems just very, very common for Toriyama. When in doubt, make them the support wife-type character. And yes, it was very cute and endearing to see her defend Gohan during the whole Barry Khan escapade, but that was the best that it got. And in some cases, when you construe it in some ways, it could become very, very, like, creepy. Like, yes, I trust Gohan completely. But one thing that we can really say, just because those two are married, it doesn't mean that they can't be badasses. In fact, this should make them even more bold. This should embolden them both to be the people that, that they are. Because they love each other so much, they want to be with each other for the rest of their lives. It means that who they are right now, each of them like the other. So therefore, just do more of the same. Especially with the whole Gohan and Videl having that superhero thing. We want more of that. And the same thing goes for President Trunks as well. We've talked about this before, but it still applies here. It'd be really, really cool and good development for them both if Vegeta was able to support Trunks in a way that his own father couldn't, or probably wouldn't. And yes, of course, he doesn't have to be all simpering or anything like that. He could support Trunks in his own way, something that is true to his character and that people would recognize as in, yeah, that is a pure Vegeta behavior. But for now though, Gohan and Vegeta are stuck and their families are sadly stuck with them. And if Toei thinks that this is the ultimate incarnation for those characters, well, why don't we just come up with some new characters then? Or have some other characters come to the fore? If you think that we cannot construct anything new with the buildings that we got for fear of it all collapsing, then why don't we just construct some new buildings then? If you get what I mean. Right now, Super doesn't really teach us anything. What it does teach us in some way is that Goku can karma Houdini himself out of almost anything. And two of the biggest contributors to any kind of development in Dragon Ball are just stuck on repeat for almost eternity. That's why character development in any story is so important. But just repeating the same development over and over again doesn't make that new development. You're just redeveloping, not just new development. You've got to find new directions for characters. There is some promise for Gohan and Vegeta, so why don't you just go after it then? People will thank you for that. So what do you guys think? Do you think Gohan and Vegeta are just destined to be recycled forever? Or do you think there is some hope for them? What can we do? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe. Catch you later!